Hello, thanks for checking out What If New Mexico, a podcast exploring multiple angles and possibilities for people living with a disability in New Mexico. Every episode unravels different experiences to guide a conversation about inclusivity and diversity inside the land of enchantment. We ask, what if it is possible to include everyone in all aspects of life? Each episode will share real conversations with people living with a disability in different communities across our state. We'll stir up dialogue to inspire a future of New Mexico that includes everyone. Join us every Friday for a new episode. Hi, it's What If New Mexico. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Star. We're here to imagine what if we truly tried to acknowledge our unique needs in learning and work environments all the way to social interaction. What if we respected everyone to express life despite religion, culture, ethnic background, sexual orientation, gender identity, and physical and mental ability?
This episode, we want to ask, what if we were not judged based on appearances and then labeled by prejudice? This week's discussion revolves around appearances, judgments, and the difference between hidden and visible disabilities. Let's start off by saying everyone is guilty of making judgments about people, situations, and whatnot. It's probably one of the most hurtful things emotionally, mentally, and even physically for people to experience. Yet, whether we recognize it or not, we're making these judgments all the time. One of the biggest first impression is when a disability shows from the beginning, and people make assumptions based on what they see.
As soon as someone sees my walker, they think something's wrong with my head or something. I don't know. Even when I'm walking in the mall and people see you, then they'll look away really fast. Yeah. This is the first group that I felt okay.
I was in special ed, and more or less like all my other friends, so-called friends, they would make fun of the people who were in special ed. It was like hurtful. It was like, why are you saying this? And they would make fun.
For my disability, how I'm seen in my community as well is sometimes my friends will tell me to speak up, and I tell them I try to speak up, but I also think it's kind of understanding too that sometimes I have to tell them that my disability is kind of hard because sometimes I have trouble talking like a baby sometimes, but I tell them that's part of my disability.
They see me as someone that's different, and they look at different as okay, I don't know how to talk to this person, or I don't know how to engage, and stuff like that, and just it can be hurtful, and people get tired of that around me, of just being different, and being optimistic or being optimistic, So that's that question. People perceive me as someone that's kind of uncomfortable to be around with.
And so for me, when I go out and I have Astra, my guide dog, and I'm walking around, going to the store, going to Starbucks, doing whatever it is I'm doing, typically people don't talk to me. And if people do talk to me, it's usually to compliment me on how, nice my dog looks or how well behaved she's being or something like that. If for whatever reason I need to leave her at home and I am out with my white cane, the conversation is completely different. If I'm walking up to a curb with my dog, nobody says anything to me. If I'm walking up to a curb with my cane, you're about to walk into the street, ma'am. Stop, you're going to get hit. Or, similarly, I'm standing at the bus stop with Astra. Nobody says anything most of the time. If I'm standing there with my cane, which bus are you looking for? where are you getting off at? Do you know where you're going? The difference is kind of startling, and it's interesting most days. Some days it's really annoying. Quite honestly, it makes me feel like a circus attraction. If anyone remembers the concept of the freak show, which I really hate that term, but that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm some kind of oddity that needs to be stared at, managed, something along those lines. And yes, it definitely puts a damper on the day sometimes.
We just heard from 6 people sharing their frustrations at being misjudged on first impressions because of their mobility device or their cane or tone of voice or something else that shows right away. But other people have hidden disabilities, which tends to stop the judgment from happening on first impressions. But is it really any better? Let's listen to some examples of assumptions being made after some time.
My stuff's not real visible. What happens is that, people approach me normally and, maybe say hi normally and stuff. But then when I start speaking and talking, I still speak fine and stuff, but they'll see I go off in a million different directions, and I'm not real I don't know what you call it, real focused on what I'm talking about when I'm talking, and they'll start to understand, there's something going on here, and then I can see like the look on their face change, and 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 all that, and then they start talking to me differently. They start trying to be like careful about what they say and all that, and I can tell.
Especially with head injuries, I don't have any accessories, and I'm pretty high functioning, but I've had so many people when my brain wasn't clicking because it just wouldn't click at that time, completely dismiss it and say something like, "Oh, you must be having a bad day." I'm like, well, it's not just or just dismiss it completely and actually sometimes get angry and say, "You're an adult woman. Come on, do it," or something. And there are times that it's not possible the same way. I get labeled a flake or not reliable or different things like that. That I know, just like many of us here, we know that's not our character. It's the outside appearance of things that sometimes make it look different, and people may not know us enough, or may not, even if they know us, may not give us that place where they look and say, well, I know their character. It's not about their character. It's just they have some mountains and hills to deal with,
And it's rough having an invisible disability. People saying, well, you don't look like you have a brain injury.
So I'm one of those people who has an invisible disability. I would take the train into Boston every day to go tutor some homeschool students. And I would take my algebra book that I was working with these students on, and I would prepare my lesson on the train. And I had a disability pass, which gave me half off the fare for the train. And so one day the conductor came by, and I'm looking at my algebra book, trying to figure out what I'm going to teach that day. And he saw my disability pass. He says, "You're not disabled." And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "No, people with disabilities can't do algebra." I was just like, "Oh, how could you think that? How could you just be that ignorant?" And I wrote a letter to the Boston Globe, and part of it said, "I want to be able to do calculus or algebra and live in a group home and get the support I need for my disability. And I don't want to be cornered into being less than who I am." I encourage others with disabilities to speak out and really make themselves heard.
For each of these people, there was really no choice in showing the disability, but it just takes longer to be revealed. It's hidden at first, but it shows over time. The first impression makes people seem non-disabled, but then as the other person sees more of you, they change their assessment of you.
Prejudice occurs when we believe that visible traits reveal a person's life, beliefs, and practices. Have you had experiences living with a hidden disability and interacting with people and disclosing?
Yes. And sometimes I even think that I wish mine showed more at the beginning so that people don't first think well of me and then get disappointed later for not living up to what they expected. I used to have, only short-term jobs before I had a corporate job. And it was nice because I could get through the job before that sort of change happened, where they would start seeing the disability.
So what you're telling me is a job, which is more of a long-term situation, hopefully, getting to know people on a daily basis, that was a lot harder for people to understand and accept you. Whereas a quick situation, a hello, goodbye, just meeting people quickly and saying goodbye, that was easier for you to mask.
Right. And even short-term jobs that were just like weeks instead of months or years.
Can you explain a little bit what you mean by mask?
When we don't disclose, some of us can mask, and that lasts for a little while. So masking, for example, in the autism world is a big topic because there's so much pressure to do it. But the longer we do it and the more the longer we do it and the more successful we are at it, the more anxiety builds up. Because masking is just not living your true self. It's pretending you're normal, essentially. And in order to escape the problems of judgment and exclusion, we mask, but we've only traded it out for trauma and exhaustion. So online, I see autistic people asking for advice on how to unmask or how to, quote, deprogram. And I can relate because showing my true self is more authentic, but it's hard to do when you're used to masking.
Next, we will hear from Erin, who discusses disclosing a disability and what happens around them as the judgments change.
Because I'm not getting clear sentences coming in yet, but I'm thinking of things like passing throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that people have interpreted me as a neurotypical cis female and straight, and those are passing things for me, as I'm a queer, body, gender, neurodivergent person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I felt like is that I've had to do a lot of work to help people to see me and not interpret me as what they're perceiving. It's either that I need to let go what they think, or I have to exert to explain who I am. But not just in those identities, but I guess when I get more into being neurodivergent, I feel misunderstood a lot. As I can pass as someone who's not disabled and in the past have lived my life passing that way, I can see a huge difference between that and when I disclose disability to people.
Laura told us about a time when she had to mask to get the outcomes she needed.
That's when people hear me talk slowly or haltingly when I'm nervous, they get impatient, and I got brushed off. I was trying to make an appointment to do my taxes, and it wasn't until the third phone call and I took a deep breath and tried real hard to sound normal and enthusiastic, and I got the appointment. But boy, it was exhausting. And we shouldn't have to bend over backwards.
Some judgments are about whether we're being a good enough disabled person, as Lindsay explains.
At least I was always taught, you may be the first blind person that person's ever seen. So you have to be a good ambassador for the blind community. And there are some days that I'm all for educating people. And there are other days when I do not have the spoons for that. And sometimes even within my own little community of sphere of influence, I guess is the word I'm going to use. Within my sphere of influence, I have people saying, you always need to be educating because, again, you're the only person, you're being an ambassador for us and whatever. And to me, that's a lot of pressure. And some days I want to take that pressure and some days I don't. And sometimes I feel judged for not taking that, being that teacher, that ambassador all the time.
Let's also hear about some intersectional issues with disabled queer people who may be judged not only on disability, but also on sexuality at the same time.
I've learned because since I'm bisexual and I like wearing ties, there's a lot of people who thinks I'm either a guy, a man, and they tell me, you look more like a man because you wear a tie. Girls shouldn't wear ties. Yeah.
And what do you respond?
I said, I like being this way because I like ties. My brothers actually knew it. One of my brothers knew I was gay. But he said, don't say anything to your mom or she'll disown you.
Mm-hmm. So your brother helped you be okay with who you are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
My older brother.
Hmm.
My last Pride, when I went to Pride, I came out of the closet. It made me feel great because they were gay and I'm gay. So it's like, hey, I fit in.
So what I felt like is that I've had to do a lot of work to help people to see me and not interpret me as what they're perceiving. I feel misunderstood a lot. But the other person I met was another man, and he was cool enough. So, I was like, okay, we can talk. But I said to him, can I be awkward with you up front? He's like, yeah. So I'm not going to be interested in you romantically or intimately or anything. I had been explaining who I am, and I kept having to remind him, like, look, this is not where we're going. I told you if you want to be friends, that's what it is. There was that misinterpretation, yeah.
We asked people how they feel about being labeled and judged, and how do they process that?
One of the founders of New Mexico Allies, her name is Marilyn Martinez. She used to say this all the time, and that was, everybody has a disability. Some you can see more than others. And that really challenges the definition of disability. And then she'd say, nobody's perfect, So anyway, I think that's a great way to kind of talk about this, but also there's so many labels. There for a long time, Marilyn would talk about labeled jars, not people. Even, we'd be out having lunch or something and they would talk to me instead of her. Well, what does she want? And I go, well, you need to ask her. And then she would tell the waitress, labeled jars, not people. And, I can speak, And so it really had a strong impact on her.
about how she was treated in around in the public, around other people who considered her disabled.
I think that I think everybody should just give a second chance to everyone. Our minds now and our perceptions can be kind of limited with just taking the first step of seeing somebody of who they are. I'm just doing what I gotta do, and so I'm still loving everyone. I love everyone you know. I love people you know. I love people you know. You know, I have friends you know, and I'm just waiting until I get friends, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Sometimes labeling the singular main thing about us is dangerous, not just alienating. Disabilities are so individual. There's really no such category as a person with a brain injury or an intellectual disability. The labels are broad and overlapping, and knowing a label can make people stick you in a box that is not the correct assessment. Sometimes people even die because of labeling so narrowly.
I, for many years, was a background supporter of, like I said, my son, who had a great deal to say. But he died, and I was absolutely overwhelmed by the way in which he died and the mistreatment that he received, and felt like, okay, somebody's got to do this. It might as well be me. As far as standing up and saying to the world, this is wrong, we've got to change. And so I just kind of stepped in there, for better or worse. Yes.
Assuming based on an appearance or a non-appearance does not give people chances to be who they are without shame. Giving into our assumptions closes doors for opportunities, growth, and building a safer community. We talked a lot about our strengths to push past the appearance or non-appearance barrier.
It's like a gift because, first of all, with my dyslexia, I can say the alphabet backwards and forwards. Like, I loved meeting new people and talking about life in general, talking about music, sports.
Yes, we all have disabilities, but we each cope and deal with them differently. We should highlight our strengths and abilities. And I don't even like to, I'm very seldom will refer to myself as a person with a disability. You know, I focus on my abilities and unique abilities. Don't judge a book by its cover. When you think about it, it's the same with disability.
I think I'm a free-spirited person. I'm definitely a person first. I would like people to look at me that way rather than the disability.
And I don't want to scare anybody off because I'm looking for some friends my own age to hang out with, so we can go out together and hang out. I like to go shopping. I like to go hiking. And I'm a fitness guru because I work out a lot. I exercise from home 7 days a week. I lift weights and I do cardio, and so I feel great about myself. And today I gave blood today, and I wanted to save lives and help others, help the COVIDs out there.
I have a T-shirt that shows how first language makes a difference in my experience. It says, I am not as normal as I first appear. If you think about, none of us really are. Appearances are deceiving and none of us are normal.
To wrap it up, no one likes to be judged, and people living with disabilities are no different. Exclusion is part of the disability. People will be able to access more and not be disabled by the system. Thanks for listening to episode 5. Join us next week for our 6th episode, in which we discuss tolerance, allyship, and intersectionality. If you don't know what that is, tune in next week to find out all about it. And we love to hear your thoughts, so please reach out to us at whatifnewmexico@gmail.com. There are no spaces. whatifnewmexico@gmail.com. And we'll talk to you next week.
and I've been in and out of the groups. Mary maybe has a lot longer time than me, but I have had some experience for 30 years now. It's been documented. And my feeling is that I am not accepted in my own community at this point because I am trying to get ahead and work my brain with various tools and services that are out there so that I can bring my community up. It hurts. I don't like being told I'm lecturing or monologizing or something like that. But basically speaking, I have the thought and then I let it pass.